we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Osama Raglan, the linguist and political commentator. Dr. Raglan, welcome to Q News. We're glad to have you with us to know your inputs on the matter. First off, thank you for joining us, sir. First off, what do you make of the Sinwar assassination?
Well, according to Israeli official sources, the assassination was a mere coincidence. It was an unplanned operation. From available videos, statements, and analyses, the assassination involved an immeasurable amount of shillings and military resources that have been committed to see the assassination through, which is a typical Israeli behavior. I mean, it pays much less attention to potential civilian damage than it does to its targets. So this is a typical and persistent Israeli violation of international law in all its aggressions. That indiscriminate targeting was coupled with the mutilation of Sinwar's body, as we have seen in those videos. Although a single hair of the man's head was good enough to make a positive DNA match, but the occupation forces mutilated the body by disproportionate targeting and taking big samples of the corpus, I'm sorry to say this, but only to take the whole body after that. So what was the point? What is equally striking in all that is how proven propagandists and disinformationists the Israelis are. They said Sinwar uses civilians and captives as human shields, which is now known to be untrue. They also said that Sinwar was hiding in tunnels, which has been found untrue as well. They used to brag about their intelligence superiority and hegemony, but this very assassination reflects the failure by Israeli intelligence services to get to a man who used to be their prisoner for about 22 years. So they know everything about him. And they also failed to even get to their captives in Gaza.
Sir, we're currently witnessing a global call for peace and to end the war in Gaza from countries like, of course, the United States, China, and France. Will the assassination affect military operations in Gaza?
Well, I don't think so. Statements by Israeli political and military officials since yesterday reveal how persistent they are to continue their genocidal effort in Gaza. What should we all remember is that the goal of what might be called de-Hamasification of Gaza, removal of Hamas from Gaza, might be attainable on the political and military levels, but never on an ideological level. Besides, Hamas is not the only resistant Palestinian faction. All other factions, be they leftist, rightist, liberals, socialists, you name it, they are all for resistance through different means. All of them want to end the occupation. All of them want a Palestinian independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. And now who is fighting against Israeli occupation in the West Bank? Hamas? No. Other factions do. So the Palestinian cause cannot and must not be limited to a single faction and whether Israel is capable of destroying it. And now think about this. Israel has assassinated every Hamas leader since the inception of the organization in 1990s or so. I mean, since its inception in the 80s, but assassinated its all leaders since the 1990s. And where did that lead them?
Sorry for interrupting you, but I would like to shed light on the role of the United States, since it's now clearly advocating for talks for a ceasefire and the exchange of the hostages and detainees. Any thoughts on the fate of the Israeli captives?
Well, this is still unknown. What I do think is more Israeli captives in Gaza are going to lose their lives by Israeli fire in the first place. American calls are not, to my own estimations and analysis, they are not serious enough to bring an end to the hostilities being committed in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Sir, on the other hand, we have Hezbollah, who has vowed to escalate the conflict due to the assassination of Yahya Sinwar. In light of this, what post-assassination scenarios would you anticipate?
Again, the Israeli official statements are all for continued war on all fronts. Since October 7th, Israel has been facing what can be termed a collective response or a multi-front response by what is known in the region as the resistance axis. Before that date, and more evidently after that, Israel adopts a strategy to reshape the Middle East according to what its Prime Minister Netanyahu said. This strategy involves several policies, and I'd like to highlight some of them in a quick notion. The first is localization. And by localization, I mean that since October 7th, Israel has been witnessing a collective effort against it. What Israel is trying to do is to localize those fronts and sever any connections between them. The second policy adopted by Israel in this regard is elimination. And by that, I mean Israel is seeking to eliminate the heads of actors involved. So far, this policy has worked with Hamas and Hezbollah, which means it might be expected to be further extended to other regional actors, whether they're state or non-state. One other policy, or the third policy, is Israel's effort to re-engineer certain territories in the region, basically and most notably Gaza. They seek to introduce irreversible changes to the region in terms of geography, as we can see in Gaza, and in terms of political and demographic landscape, as we can see in Lebanon. For the very first time, we have seen the U.S. Air Force B-2 Spirit long-range stealth bombers are used to strike about 500 targets in Yemen.
Sir, sorry for interrupting you again, but I would like to know your intake on Netanyahu's statement when he said that now there's a chance for peace in the Middle East. Will he proceed in talks for a ceasefire and the exchange of hostages or detainees, or do you expect that he would face some kind of objection from his far-right government like Smotrich and Ben Gvir?
Well, actually, you provided the bottom line. For almost a year now, whenever an exchange deal or a peace deal is looming, the Israeli government would simply walk away from it. Why? Because they are too extremists to cut a deal or ensure the return of their own captives. Israel is not going to stop. The incumbent Israeli government is not going to stop its war on various fronts, and it is going to open new fronts according to what is available of information and data. They're going to open new fronts. Why? Because they are making good use of this watershed moment in U.S. politics, I mean domestic politics.
That was Dr. Osama Raglan, the linguist and political commentator. Thank you so much for joining us on Q News and for your valuable insights.